Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharya Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyan Deshatani Jaya Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gauranga Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare
Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Pranamale Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharne Navasesha Sanyavari Pachati Devi Om Agyanatimiranda Sirajana Jana Salakaya Chaksu Sumeditandena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Caitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Sapadantikam Panchakalpatrubhasya Kripasandubhaya Pachapatinam This is an interesting part of Caitanya Caritamrta, leading to even more interesting parts. But especially the leading to more will tend to be quite philosophical. And this part here is philosophical, but mostly shastric philosophical. Less logic, just more simple shastra. And the issue that's coming up is that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has told his brother-in-law, Gopinathacharya, said that he would like to initiate Mahaprabhu into a better sampradaya. Sampradaya means community. That's how we usually translate sampradaya. A better community than the one he's currently in. He wants to bring him into the Saraswat community, which is considered a higher class than the Bharati community. So Gopinathacharya was a resident, actually both Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Gopinathacharya were residents of the district of West Bengal, then just Bengal, of Nadia. So and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was the age of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's father. And his own father, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's own father, he was a friend, I'm not sure if that's exactly the right word, but a respected friend of the grandfather, the maternal grandfather, Nilambara Chakravarti of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was naturally very affectionate. They came from the same district, the same hometown, so to speak, and there was some relationship, village relationship amongst them. And Gopinathacharya was also from Nadia, but he knew Chaitanya Mahaprabhu previously. And this is one of the very interesting elements of the history of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is that tens and tens and tens and tens and tens of people who had contact with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu before he was a famous sannyasi. But all of them, all the residents of Mayapur Navadvip, Nadia, who had any contact with him and who were devotional, accepted him not as an ordinary person, not as a great devotee even, but they accepted him as a Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Bhagavan, Ishvara. So, there are many, there are people, and it's even a temptation, to think of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a great exalted sannyasi devotee. But those who actually were in his presence saw that he was so much more than that. We can say so much more than that, but that's only on one level, because on another level, on the deepest level of rasa, not speaking from the level of tattva, the devotee becomes even greater than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He even conquers the Supreme Lord. The philosophy of Krishna consciousness is so interesting in that sense, and it's so different from theology in any other religion. The Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy is so subtle and so nuanced. So in any case, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, out of his affection, but not understanding who Caitanya Mahaprabhu was, he wanted to do something good for him. He wanted to bring him into a better, quote, better sampradaya. And Gopinath Acharya said, there's a point that you're missing here, that Mahaprabhu is not dependent on the sampradaya. He is not a sannyasi. He is a sannyasi, but he's not only a sannyasi, a jiva who is taken to the path of renunciation, but he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is Bhagavan, he is Ishvara. So what we're going to hear today, some of the discussion on this point between Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. He was perhaps or at least in the category of one of the greatest scholars in all of India at that time, historically. I remember looking in a history book, and you can even, if you look up Nava Nyaya. Nyaya means what? Logic, yeah. So this is one of the six sadarshans, the six philosophical paths to find the absolute, the path of Nyaya. It's an ascending path that's used. Logic is used, but it's not a path that can bring one to the absolute truth. It brings one at best to something impersonal, because it's ascending. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya went to Matila at one point, and this is just a historical fact. And where is Matila? What country right now? Nepal. That very wonderful place. And what is Matila also famous for? Birthplace of Sita Devi. And what is it? It's called Janakpur. No. And Krishna himself actually went to that place, to Janakpur. Does anyone know when? Is when there's a chapter in 10th canto. It's the 85th chapter, I believe. And if Caitanya Mataji was here, she could confirm that. 85th chapter, I think, where Krishna, it's called, I think, the kidnapping of, or Krishna visits the Brahmin whose name is Shrutadev, and the king whose name is Bahulasva. It's such a blessing actually to read Shastra, and it's also a great fortune to give class. So therefore, we thank you all for coming, because it gives us an opportunity to speak about Krishna, and it gives an opportunity to remember, especially what we've heard about Krishna. And because otherwise, if my mind isn't thinking about Krishna, I won't even tell you what it's thinking about. It's thinking about anything, everything from this part of the universe to that part of the universe, and over and over and over. It drives me crazy. And yes, but maybe I'm not the only one. But the material minds, golly gee. It just is, one moment it's saying how great you are and everyone else is wrong, and at the next moment it's telling you how terrible you are and you're feeling so bad about yourself. And that's the very nature of the material mind. And the Avanti Brahmana in the 23rd chapter of the 11th canto says there is no other cause of suffering in this world other than the mind. That's such a heavy statement. That's his conclusion. It's not the planets that causes suffering. It's not. He goes through a whole. I was about to say that it's not your wife who causes you suffering, because I better be careful what I say right now, etc. But it's not your husband on the other side. That's the problem. It's not the planets. It's not this person. It's not that person. It's not the situation. It's not the government. It's not the weather. It's only the mind. This is such a heavy realization that the Avanti Brahmana came to. Why is it a heavy realization? And I'm going to wait for an answer from this one here.
And I'm going to take responsibility.
Because then one has to take responsibility. Good answer. Any other answer? Huh? The mind. Well, sometimes we don't want to give the mind a terrible name. I mean, it's when it's raging all over the universe, then it's the enemy, because it drags us all over the universe, literally. It'll drag us from one birth in one planet to another birth in another species, on and on and on and on, according to the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. But what I was thinking of specifically, anyone else have a thought of why that statement is so heavy? That there's no other cause of suffering than in the mind? Yes, Vasudam.
That's a good quote.
Yeah, that's also a very good answer. Yes.
I'm so used to thinking that it's from my body, and to think like that makes me really realize that.
Yeah, that's sort of bordering on what I was thinking. Not that what other was said wasn't also true, and even more true. But anyone else? Yes. Yeah, it puts the responsibility on oneself. Yeah. But I was thinking of, I think all of your answers were better than what I was thinking. Now, okay, sorry. Why do you think the mind, do you know that you have a mind? Where is it? It's here. But can you put try to feel your fingers. Without with your other hand. Can you put your consciousness in your fingers? Huh? Can you feel that you have fingers there? Can you put your consciousness in your fingers? Yeah. Okay. How about your toes right now? Yeah. So that's your mind moving. So it's not only there. It's there a lot of the time. It's not only there. It's all pervading in our body, and we can direct it. And this is such a wonderful thing that we can actually. It's theoretically possible to control the mind. And it's actually required. But what's the best way to control the mind? Is to what?
Put our hand in the bead
bag. That's true or not true. First of all, because you can have a bead bag that just washed and it doesn't have any beads in it, and it won't help you. And also, sometimes we put our hand in our bead bag, but we don't put our mind in our bead bag. And then our mind just starts doing the same thing it does all day long. It's just travel about, no it isn't, yes it is. So it's not just that, but the best way to control the mind is to be in love with Krishna. And then we put our hands in the bead bag and we'll be calling out to Krishna. Let me serve you, dear Krishna. please, this would be the greatest gift if you allow me to serve you, if I can engage in your service. This is the greatest fortune. But I still didn't tell you what I was thinking, why the statement is so heavy meaning meaningful, is because it says that 98 or maybe even more percentage of what goes on in my mind every single day is causing me suffering, and it's not my benefit. So that's very heavy. I find it very heavy anyway. So the real art, and this is one real gift of Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Rupa Goswami, is the Abandha Krishna Sambandha Yukta Vairagya, to seek know that everything, even the mind, every single thing of this world, even an aeroplane. Does anyone know what kind of plane that is? Huh? It's a propeller plane, though. So you know very well all about propeller planes. You're on them all the time. Because I grew up in a place in New York, but in an outside part of New York, and there was a small airfield, 10 or 20 miles from our house, and you could always hear the light planes, the propeller planes going over. So I think of that. But it has a relationship with Krishna, and that's the art of living in this world, and that's such a gift, that everything can be seen in relationship with Krishna, because you can't hide from the material world. It follows us, it chases us. Where will we go in this day and age where we won't hear the sound of a plane, or the sound of traffic, or the sound of your mobile phone going off? Where will you go to escape from the things of the material world? There's nowhere to go. So we have to go inside. That's the place to go, but not inside on the level of the mind, or inside on the level of the intelligence, but inside on the level of who we actually are, the soul, ourselves. And we're not only a soul, but we're servants of Krishna. That's who we are. Surupoi, Jiver Krishna Das. We have to go to that level, which is actually that's who we are. That's the base level, foundational level of who we are. And then it gets deeper and deeper after that. How do we serve Krishna? Who are we in Krishna's service? But it's always as a servant of Krishna. Sri Advaita Acharya, who taught this. And of course, Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami says it. So seeing everything and using everything, or the opportunity to see and use things in Krishna's service, and heal the divided mind. The divided mind. We live in a divided mind, a universe of divided mind, where this is for me, and this is for, and yes, we're at least fortunate enough that we want to do something for Krishna. So this is mine, this is for Krishna. And if I'm doing something for Krishna, at least let me get something out of it, at least some small percentage, at least a little fame, and everyone to say you've done a good job and you're good this and that. At least let me get something out of it. But that's not love. That's not the way of love of Krishna thinks. The love of Krishna thinks, how can I please you, my dear one, my Lord? And that's the happiness that's gifted to us all when one gives oneself to Krishna fully. And then one can see everything in relationship with Krishna. I've told this story many times before, and eventually we shall get to the Caitanya Caritamrta. Don't worry. Krishna willing, I'll say, is that Prabhupada, there was at 26th Avenue, there was one, there were, the room, the kirtans were full of eccentric people. That's who were all very unique people. And one of the unique people who was coming was, I can't remember his name, but he was a musician, and he played the. Does anyone have a piano in their house? You do. You play the piano, yes. Did you ever open up the top of the piano and see what's inside? Because if you push the little keys, right, a sound comes out, right?
Yeah, we have electric pianos, we can't do that.
You can't even do that, boy. Forget the whole story, forget the whole philosophy, you have to do something else. No, but so in the old days, when your great-grandmother, the pianos, it's hard to explain, had all these strings.
Yeah, I have seen them.
Yeah,
At school.
at school, in the museum. You can tell. Yeah, anyway, I'll just keep on going on and on if I don't focus a little. But the inside the pianos were all these strings, and you would tune the piano by tightening and loosening the strings. So this person had taken out the strings of the piano, and at 26th Avenue, he used to just bang on the strings during the kirtan. He was eccentric, and he was a musician. And the most famous of music halls in New York City is called Carnegie Hall. And he was somehow or another, he rented Carnegie Hall, and he was going to have a concert there. And because he was coming to the kirtans, and Prabhupada was leading the kirtans and giving classes, and he had so much respect for Prabhupada, he invited Prabhupada to come to the concert at Carnegie Hall. And Prabhupada went. So at the beginning of so Prabhupada sat down, and I don't know how many people had attended, but 10 or 15 or something like that, all his friends probably. And Prabhupada was there. So in the first part, he opened up the piano that was there, and he started banging on the strings of the piano as part of the concert. He was, and Prabhupada, that was the first half of the concert. And then Prabhupada left after the first half he played. He left. So later, and Prabhupada went on the subway probably. Have you? Who's been in a New York subway? Yeah, very exciting. Yes. I've also been. And so I think it was Brahmananda Prabhu who had taken Prabhupada on the subway, and he said to Prabhupada, "This is just like hell, isn't it?" And Prabhupada said, "No, in hell there's no electricity. If you think this is bad." So in any case, they asked Prabhupada, after the devotees asked Prabhupada, "Why did you go to this concert? Why did you even go? You knew what was banging on." And Prabhupada replied, "I wanted to see if Carnegie Hall would be good for as a temple." So even though Prabhupada was, and ISKCON maybe wasn't even formed yet, and there was no money or anything like that, but Prabhupada was always thinking very big and thinking in terms of using everything in Krishna's service. Yes. So I'm not sure how all this connected to Gopinath Acharya and his conversation with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, but there was the issue of Sampradaya, and Gopinath Acharya said, "You don't understand who Mahaprabhu is. Sri Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya is." And he said, that he's the Supreme Lord. And the only way you can know him will start here. You can't understand him by nyaya. You can't understand him by logic. Do you know what nyaya means in Sanskrit? Logic. Do you know what logic means? Sort of? Okay. It's hard to define what logic means. Anyway, later I'll try my best to explain it. So he says, Anupam pramanam nahi isvara tattva gyan, that one through the pramana, the proof, the proof of anuman or logic, nahi, one cannot isvara gyan, one cannot get knowledge of the Supreme Lord. Kripa vina, without mercy, keha nahi, that one cannot understand him without mercy. Ishvara kripa lesha, without even a little bit of kripa lesha, even just a speck, a taint, a tinge of mercy. Hai ta yahare, say ta ishvara tattva jani vari pare. One will not be able to understand unless one gets some mercy. So this is what Gopinath Acharya said. If one receives but a tiny bit of the Lord's favor by dint of devotional service, he can understand the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, what thoughts just went through your mind? Other than what time is prasada and things like that. But about this, I'll read it again. But what thoughts went naturally through your mind? One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead only by His mercy. If one receives but a tiny bit of the Lord's favor by dint of devotional service, he can understand the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What thought, before I asked you to answer, and now you can think logically about what should I be thinking, but what thought naturally went through your mind? Yes.
I'm trying to use scientific evidence and all of that to prove or to re-establish my faith. But it's fully dependent on the mercy of the Lord for me to understand and appreciate it.
It's a very deep thought. Avi?
I was thinking about a past time where Brahma came out.
What was the lot of things that he did, Brahma did? He traced his source. So that's what we try to do. We use logic. If I can just trace my source, where I came from, or where I came from, and where did she come from, and where did he come from, and on and on and on and on, just trying to trace the source back, or using logic in some other way. No, you can't understand in that way. You can understand something, but you cannot understand the person behind that. Any more than one can understand the nature of the person who grew the rice, the basmati rice from Punjab, and put it in the... You can understand something that a person was involved, or something that got in the bag, but you can't understand the nature and personality of the person who grew the rice and put it in there by your logic. If one receives but a tiny bit of the Lord's favor by dint of devotional service, he can understand the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what do you think when you hear that? Yes.
There's no way, actually there's no way one can understand it. Even if he allows you to understand it, then you will not see an idea. Anytime he can take that out.
It's interesting how all of us are individuals, and naturally different thoughts will go through our mind based on our individuality. Some of us don't want to say what through our mind, and probably some of us weren't thinking anything at that time. Anyone else like to say what they thought? Yes, Parthidama. Should I read it again? And you tell me what you think? If one receives but a tiny bit of the Lord's favor means mercy, kindness, by dint of devotional service, if by devotional service one gets just a little bit of Krishna's favor or kindness, he can understand the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can understand who Krishna is. Would you like to say anything? Not sure, maybe. Can I ask you a question? Another question? How come when your tooth falls out, another one grows back in? Behind it. Yeah? Yeah, it pushes it out. That's a good answer. But why? Why does it happen like that? Why does that one behind it grow in? It's quite mysterious. Yeah, well, there's the right answer right there. Very good. Because of Krishna. The scientists will say, because of this, and then you ask, like there's one tooth pushes the other tooth out. So you can, and it's correct to say the reason it falls out because the tooth behind it pushes it. But then you ask the next why question. Why does the tooth behind it push it? And then and the scientist will have another answer. But then you ask the next question back, why does that? Why? And if you ask enough why questions, your teacher will throw you out of the classroom. So the answer is appropriate according to the level of understanding of the person who asked the question. So Sudama answered on the highest level because Krishna does it. And then Gopinath Acharya adds a Shastric verse from Lord Brahma's prayers. Atapite devapadam bujadvaya prasara leshan anugrita evihi janati tadvam bhagavan me no nachanya eko api chiram vachinvan. Brahma, who is so intelligent, says to Krishna, who is standing before him with a flute in his hand, a little cowherd boy, my Lord, if one is favored by even a slight trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. But those who speculate in order to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years. This is from Brahma's prayers in the 14th chapter. I'll read a little of Prabhupada's purport. The first part of Prabhupada's purport, he speaks about a verse from the Brahma Samhita. Vedeshu dolo mamadolo mabaktao. How does that verse begin? I also forgot. Yes. Yeah. Yes, but that's not the right book. It's from the Bhagavad Gita, that one. Chintamani Prakasa Sadmasu Kalpavriksha. Yeah, what's the next line? Krishna has stolen everything away. Okay. Adurlabham. So here's what Prabhupada says. The Brahma Samhita states, Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham Atmabhakta. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the ultimate goal of knowledge, Vedescha Savamaham Vidyo, one who is not a pure devotee and who is not engaged in the service of the Lord cannot understand him. Lord Brahma therefore confirms this. Vedeshu Durlabha. It is very difficult to understand the Supreme Lord simply through one's studies. Adurlabham Atmabhakta. However, it is very easy for the devotees to capture the Lord. The Lord is known as Ajita, unconquerable. No one can conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the Lord consents, he agrees to be conquered by his devotees. That is his nature, as stated in the Padma Purana. Ataksi Krishna namadi nabhavet graham indriyai sevan mukhi jivado sayam eva sparatyada. Being pleased by devotional activities, the Lord reveals himself to his devotees. That is the way to understand him. Okay, I'd just like to concentrate on this one sentence. Being pleased by devotional activities, the Lord reveals himself to his devotees. That is the way to understand him. So being pleased by devotional activities, the Lord reveals himself to his devotees. What stands out for you in that? Are there any civil engineers who can answer that question? Okay. Yes. And right before that, being pleased. So what will please Krishna in activities? If they're devotional. So what is the meaning of devotional activities? It means activities that are performed with devotion. And what is the meaning of activities that are performed with devotion? What does that mean? Yeah. Or to please the other. So activities performed to please the other, and the other in this case means to Krishna. That is satisfying to Krishna, and when Krishna is satisfied. So it's not mechanical. It's not like when you get on the train in Perth, what do? You tag on. So you're giving something to the train company, Metronet, is it? The train company, but you're not. But it's an activity, and it gets you on the train. But it's not devotion. You're not doing it to please the train company. No one thinks they're doing it to please the train company. Maybe some people do, but I don't know any of them. Prasadam, is it getting cold now? A little cold? Has the sun gone behind the clouds, or has the cloud covered the sun? Yeah. Why? Yeah, why are they moving? Yeah. You're already scientist. But if you answer that in school, I'm not sure what will happen to your grades. So he's quoted Shastra. And then he says to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, you are a great scholar, and you are a teacher of many disciples. Indeed, there is no other scholar like you on earth. So he went to Matila. That's how we started wandering around. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya went to Matila because in Matila there was a school of logic called Navanyaya, or New Logic. And a person there who was teaching, he had written a book when he started Navanyaya. And this was the only place where he was teaching, and this was the only place where the book was being taught. And it was very powerful, this Navanyaya. And he wouldn't let anyone copy the book. And this is historical fact. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, this is long before he met Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, being a great scholar, he went there and he memorized the book. And then he went to Navadvip, which was more or less a university town at that time, and he began to teach Navanyaya. So he was famous all over Bharat, all over India. Indeed, there is no other scholar like you on earth. Nonetheless, because you are bereft of even a pinch of the Lord's mercy, you cannot understand him, even though he is present in your home. Even though Mahaprabhu is in your home, you can't understand who he is. But it is not your fault. It is the verdict of Shastra, of scriptures. You cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by scholarship. Again, in Prabhupada's purport, he says, if one is slightly favored by the mercy of the Lord, if the Lord is pleased, one can understand him. But who are the candidates eligible to receive the Lord's mercy? Only the devotees. They alone can understand what is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord reveals himself to the sincere devotee when he is pleased with his service. Svayam eva spuratyada. So what do you think when you hear that? Because when we read or hear, we want to be active and let the text interact with our consciousness and our thoughts and our mind. So how do you react to that? Who are the candidates eligible to receive the mercy of the Lord? Only the devotees. Yes. Yes, of course you wanted it. What do you think of it?
Logic fails.
Logic fails. What do you think, Liti? Yeah, it's really important to please Krishna. And what else? Okay, now if you would just change that to make it a little more personal. How would you make it more personal? What would you say? Okay, but how would you make that personal? No, I wasn't moving in that direction. If you'd write the sentence, if you'd say the sentence, instead of, what is the best way I can please Krishna? Yeah, that's what I meant. So that's a question that sometimes we don't like to hear the answer to. But it's a question we should ask ourselves if we would like to get some mercy from Krishna. And Krishna, I recently heard a lecture where Prabhupada was speaking about this, when he was saying that it's not that hard. Even if he can be pleased by a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water. He wasn't saying that that's all that anyone should give, but he was saying, but if that's all you have, that's all you can get. And then he even said, even if you don't have a flower, you can ask someone. And then he said, can I have this? Can I have a flower from your garden? I want to offer it to Krishna. And then Prabhupada said, no sane man will say no to such a request. So even if you don't have these things, you can still please Krishna. So Prabhupada was pointing out that it was such a liberal, Krishna was so liberal and kind by describing how he can be pleased that anyone can do it, but bhaktyaham. But there should be some desire in there to please Krishna. Prashadama, did you notice that the sun came out? From behind the clouds. Are you getting tired? Huh? Okay, just wondering. Are there any questions or comments at this point? Yes. Yes. Now, could you say the English meaning? Okay, now you have a homework assignment. Beginning. So his form is non-different from everything. He's inconceivably he's always in that transcendental position and never falls from it. Advaitam Achyutam Anadim, he's beginningless, and his form, Ananta Rupam, his form is, Ananta means what? Unlimited. So that's inconceivable. How could something with form be unlimited? Because when you, like this table has form, so it begins here and it ends here. The book has form. Everything, things that have form are limited, you would think, but Krishna has an Anantarupam, unlimited form. Wow. So how is it possible to conceive of and know him? And he's Vedeshu Durlabham, very hard to understand him through the Vedas. But when there is Atma Bhakta, when there is devotion, the soul, the Atma, has devotion, then he can be understood. Why? Because then that inspires Krishna to reveal himself to the person, because there is devotion. And we see that same tendency in ourselves too. That when you meet someone on the street, you don't go telling him the story of your whole life immediately. Or if you have a business acquaintance, you may talk to him about things, a friend, you may talk to him about things, but you don't tell him what's going on in your family life or the inner parts of your mind. different types, but the deepest of friends, it's even your good friends, you don't tell everything to, more or less. But if someone you know loves you, then you'll reveal everything to him. You can, because you can trust such a person. This comes out. So Krishna is a person. And he's just like that. And Krishna's greatest secret is Vrindavan and the activities that go on in Vrindavan. So it's very confidential and very secret. And one has to be fully trustworthy before he will give you entrance into that mysterious, most sweet land. And that's what Mahaprabhu came to give, to bring us in, give us entrance. Any other questions or comments? And then the question that doesn't have to be answered out loud is, do you want to go there or do you want to stay here? That's a question you can ask yourself and answer yourself. Okay, we shall end now. Thank you so much. Sri Caitanya Caritamrta ki jai, Sri Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj ki jai, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Gopinathacharya ki jai, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bol.